Hey, welcome back, everybody. It's Andrew Beach, Executive Career Coach. I help professionals communicate their value to find great opportunity faster, whether you're working or not. That's through branded networking. That's why I'm here. That's why we have this every Friday, 3 p.m., free coaching. So we're going to wait for people to rejoin us here. We were having some issues with some of the streaming. So we have reinitiated the stream and we're back. So if you have any questions, go ahead and leave those in the chat. Use the hashtag Career Happy Hour when you're asking questions. What questions do you have regarding interviewing, job search, networking, market planning, resume, if you must, LinkedIn, best practices? So whatever questions you have, go ahead and leave those in the chat, and I'll answer those as we go along here, okay? We have a handful of people joining us today. I do appreciate you joining today. Today's session will start off with a little bit of reading in our favorite book on networking. We're now in chapter 8. You can see all the sessions in a playlist actually on YouTube. So if you need to review the book club, the book that we're actually reviewing today is the National Business Employment Weekly book on networking. It's my favorite how-to book for networking. Not so much the one that says why you should network, but certainly how to network. I think all of us know intuitively that we need to be networking. So I don't need to be evangelizing the reason why we network, but we do need to evangelize how to network. And that's why I'm here. I've found that networking in the 4 times I've been in career transition was pivotal in my finding and securing and understanding the type of work that I love and the places in which I could do it. So I highly recommend it. By the way, where are you joining from? Let me know in the chat. Just go put that information in the chat for me, please. And then leave any questions there. By the way, would you do me a favor? Every platform that you're on has a share button. If you could share that to your Twitter or your LinkedIn connections or even to your friends here on Facebook, that would be great. I would really, really appreciate that. So we're going to hop into the book here and we're going to take a look at what's next. And that is chapter 8. So I should probably edit this slide to align with the chapters we're talking about here. So my apologies. I'm going to go back. Yes, I use Canva for my slides. I like them a lot. If you like Canva, give me a thumbs up. Thumbs up. Smash that like button. So we're talking chapter 8 in the Wall Street Journal, National Business Employment Weekly book on networking. It's insider strategies for tapping the hidden market where jobs are found. Okay. So chapter 8. Okay. If you have any questions, leave those in the chat. I'm happy to answer when we get there. Hey, Chelsea, good to see you. Nathan, you're back. Nathan's back. Do you have your finger on the pulse? Yes, I do. I've got one. I've got a pulse. Good to have you guys. Good to see all these fine faces here. Welcome, welcome. Just, hey, start networking amongst yourselves. I'll just read from the book, if that's okay. So this is chapter 8, looping back and following up. Congratulations. The meeting's over. You made it through alive and you're out of here. It went pretty well, don't you think? You were clear and succinct in your 2-minute drill and your statement of your objectives. The Q&A provided some interesting insights, if no immediate leads, and the contact appeared eager to help. You closed the meeting strongly and promised to keep the contact posted on your progress. You've already made an appointment with one of the referrals he mentioned. Good job. And that fact is stated clearly in the thank you note you sent him, which is in the mail. Now, if you're going to send something in the mail, folks, make sure you use a sponge and not your own tongue, your own saliva. And then put a little note on the back of there that says, hey, the sealing of this envelope involved no saliva. You're done, right? All you have to do is repeat this process 120 more times and you'll have developed a spectacular network and succeeded in getting a lot of market exposure for yourself. Wait, though there's more. What could be more? In chapter 1, we compared each networking contact with an antenna. in your networking meetings, one of your main goals is to get each of these mini antennae tuned to your frequency so that they'll be sensitized to listening for and retain information that might be of value to you. Even if they aren't able to help right now, they may overhear some gossip next week or next month that may turn out to be the key to your next job. The problem is in harvesting all this information. You can't rely on every contact to call you each time he hears a juicy morsel that could be of use. If you've lodged the image of yourself firmly in the perceptual apparatus, he may think of you momentarily. File that data away somewhere in his head and promptly forget about it the moment his mind turns to newer or more pressing matters. If your contact learns of some really major news, like an incredible job opening that only he knows about, he might take the time to call. After all, the call could make him look really good and prove that he truly does know all there is to know. The potential for such a rich gratification may prompt him to take out time from his busy life and give you a ring. But don't count on hearing from many people of your contacts. They said they'd keep their eyes and ears open and get in touch if they hear of anything interesting, but they were probably just being polite. There's the rub. They're just being polite. All your antennae are out there sucking up information and not necessarily doing anything with it. Good point. The war story, the 7-year itch. Our friend Calvin, the engineer turned lawyer whose 2-minute drill was presented in Chapter 2, was busily networking among Philadelphia's venture capital community. Several people said he ought to meet Richard Bruton. He warned that Bruton was extremely hard to see. Calvin put it off until he had a spare moment one afternoon and then placed an introductory call. Seconds after the secretary put him on hold to see if Mr. Bruton is in, Bruton picked up and said, "Calvin, could you get over here right now?" 10 minutes later, he was ushered into Bruton's office. "Glad to meet you, Calvin," said Bruton. "Do you know someone named Liam O'Brien?" Calvin searched his memory bank. "I remember him. He was my opponent in some oral arguments in my first case ever at Big, Large, and Humongous. This was about 7 years ago. I was a rank beginner, and he carved me up something awful. I learned a lot that day." Bruton smiled. "He's been my next-door neighbor for 20 years. He came over to my patio for a drink about 7 years ago and said, 'Dick, I argued some motions this morning against a young lawyer who I think may be the smartest person I've ever seen. He is something out of the ordinary with unbelievable maturity and business judgment for someone his age. If he ever crosses your path, you ought to take a hard look at him, make it a job for him if you have to. He has never said that about any other person in the years I've known him," and said Bruton. "And out of the blue, he brought you up again about 4 years ago. Did you ever run across that Calvin kid?" Lord, he was impressive. "I really remembered that, Calvin. So now," Bruton continued, "it's 7 years later, and out of the blue, you call me. One glance at your resume, and I knew it was you. Boy, I thought I'd never meet you. I know what goes around comes around, but that's really pushing the envelope, don't you think? Anyway, might you be interested in doing some business with an old warhorse like me? I got some capital I need to stick somewhere, and if you can come up with some good ideas, I think you could count on some significant seed money." This story is a reminder. He protected the names of the innocent. By the way, that's a true story. This story is a reminder that what goes around comes around. We just can't predict when. Maybe it has already come around for you and you don't know it. Calvin reported having mixed emotions after his meeting with Bruton. On one hand, he'd struck networking gold. On the other, that gold had been available to him for years and he didn't know it. The possibility that there might be scores of similar untapped resources should be enough to drive Calvin and every other networker into a frenzy of follow-up activity in addition to all the other tasks associated with the networking process. The better your networking goes, the harder it will be to build systematic follow-up into your typical day. So true. Say you expand your network to 100 contacts in scheduling, calling, recalling, and finally chatting with them. Each of them requires 10 minutes per follow-up. You're following up every 2 months. Then during a 6-month job search, you'll have to spend 3,000 minutes or 50 hours on follow-up activity alone. Few networkers are disciplined enough to build that kind of effort into their planning, that's for sure. Particularly when it's more exciting to make new contacts than to cultivate existing ones. Besides, the vast majority of follow-ups won't have anything new or earth-shattering to tell. Follow-up isn't fun, but it's essential. Keeping your image fresh. Keeping your image fresh. Fortunately, effective follow-up doesn't require subjecting yourself and your contacts to more full network meetings. Follow-up is done most efficiently by phone or by video conference today, and the call needn't take more than a couple of minutes, unless, of course, the contact has information to share or initiates a longer conversation. Follow-up calls stand the best chance of getting through first thing in the business day, so sometime before 8:30 or after 5 p.m., the times when people are most likely to pick up their own phones. This fact argues for planning your follow-up activity as a daily ritual, another component of the structured daily process of reviewing and answering ads, reading newspapers and periodicals, doing library or database research, updating your master networking list, see Chapter 9, prioritizing possible new contacts, writing meeting request letters, making meeting request calls, and keeping all your meeting appointments. That's a lot to do in a day. People who have a natural sales aptitude find this a natural approach to following up. They are perfectly comfortable calling and talking to strangers, and they look forward to reestablishing contact with people they've already met. For them, cold calling is routine, and follow-up with some contacts daily is actually fun. Says one extrovert, quote, "Running a job search is simply selling a product. Only you're the product. And don't tell me you're not a natural salesperson. If you're running a job search, you're in sales for the duration of the search, whether you like it or not. If you don't like it, then run a better search and make it end faster. Backing away from the tasks that every person in sales must master won't make the process more comfortable. It'll just make you feel guilty and keep you unemployed." Unquote. This common sense advice notwithstanding, many of us approach the phone with dread, and the thought of following up for 30 or 45 minutes each day, unpalatable. "I feel like such a nag," says Margaret, a compensation and benefits specialist. "It's so transparent. It's like I'm calling to say, you didn't help me enough in the networking meeting, so can you do more for me now?" Seems normal. Whether you make your follow-up calls once a week or once a year, you can take the edge off the call if you start by giving help rather than asking for additional assistance. That's the key to this chapter right there. Let's say that again. Whether you make your follow-up calls once a week or once a year, you can take the edge off the call if you start by giving help rather than asking for additional assistance. As you make your daily rounds, you too are gathering anecdotal information. In fact, because your networking involves systematically trafficking in information, you're probably more attuned to stray bits of gossip than the average person. A high percentage of the tidbits you'll hear will make you think of someone you've networked with. This is where you get to connect other people. File that information somewhere and use it as your opener when you make a follow-up call. Suppose, for example, you're networking in real estate facilities management. For example, quote, "Jill, I heard a piece of information yesterday that made me think of you. Did you know that Allstate's building management had a big fight with your competitor, Custodial Services, Inc., and jerked their contract? That means that right now, Allstate's has 58 office buildings under management. I looked it up, without any way of getting them cleaned. You may want to give them a call." 58 office buildings. While I have you, I also wanted to let you know that Shannon McCulloch was a really super lead, but that Barney James is no longer with Dynamicon. I've not been able to track him down. Have you heard where he might have gone? In any event, you may want to mark your Rolodex. A Rolodex, by the way, is a contact database. I've got several things cooking at the first interview stage, but nothing that I think will ripen into the job of my dreams. When we talked, you mentioned some building maintenance companies in northern Illinois that you have a supply buying co-op with. Have any of them mentioned a developer or client in their area that might need management or leasing help? That's a job search update. I mean, this is one of the best ways to follow up with people in your network is to just create for yourself a job search update. Okay. Yeah, Venkatesh, it's, let me get the book up. The networking book, in fact, the networking book information should be in the chat. If it's not, I can certainly look in there. But I think a link to the book on Amazon is included in the information here on LinkedIn. So, job search update. Frankly, it's not important whether Jill has already heard the information about her competitor or not. If she isn't, you're providing her with real value, and the rule of reciprocal favors, I'll scratch your back if you scratch mine, comes into effect. She owes you one. If she has already heard the news, you still develop goodwill simply by showing that you're thinking of her, are attuned to her interests, and will take the time to call her when you hear interesting gossip. This technique of using information as your icebreaker determines the priority of whom you call for follow-up. You have to call contacts while the information is still fresh. That's why whenever somebody gives you a piece of advice, information, or a connection to another person, act on it quickly. Did you hear the Titanic sank? Won't earn you many points. So part of your structured follow-up planning should be set aside for current events calls. In this same vein, you can take steps that have no immediate follow-up value but can pay huge dividends later on. Foremost among these is sending your contact articles, press releases, periodicals, those are called magazines, or research information of interest to them. This tactic works best if you don't explicitly or implicitly request immediate help in return. Just clip out or copy the article and stick a note on the front. Quote, Don, this reminded me of our conversation about widgets. Thought you might find it interesting. Best, Dick Jones. Unquote. Any business referral you can make to a contact will earn you considerable goodwill, even if it doesn't pan out. Everyone responds warmly to the idea that someone has their economic interests at heart. Structuring the follow-up call. It's getting better. Structuring the follow-up call. When it comes time to make follow-up calls, you should at least have thought through the agenda for each call so that you don't meander aimlessly after connecting. Some reality checking is an essential part of this agenda. Just because you vividly remember your meeting with the contact doesn't mean that he recalls the meeting. What was discussed, or what he may have promised to do. You may have to quickly and adroitly refresh his memory, or her memory. Here are some sample scripts for various follow-up purposes. This one's called the Identity Reality Check. The Identity Reality Check. Quote, Bill, this is Amos Smith calling. You may remember that we chatted a couple of months ago at the suggestion of Noel Kissinger. I was the one who had just resigned from United Food and Beverage. Unquote. Don't force people into yes-no questions such as, do you remember me? If they don't, they'll either feel awkward or have to lie. Bad positioning. Status reality check. Status reality check. When we spoke, I was concentrating my job search on product development roles with snack food manufacturers in the Southwest. That's still my main focus, although I've expanded my search to the West Coast. Some friends have also suggested that my background would translate readily into new product development and other consumer products. So I've begun to look into that area as well. It's just an update. It's a status report. You're giving him a job search update. The refresher on meeting content. It's a refresher on meeting content. When we met, you gave me a lot of information about RJR Nabisco and told me about the competitor analysis your market research company had just completed on snack foods. You may remember that I mentioned a couple of Southern companies that hadn't been surveyed, and we also wondered about where Barney Jones had moved to. Summary of your progress. Summary of your progress. Since we met, I've contacted 20 or so people, and everything suggests there may be a better market in Southern California than here in the East Coast. Several people echoed your thought that I may need formalized marketing training if I want to get out of product design, and I've signed up for an intensive consumer product marketing course at State U. In general, my years with Yum Yum Foods seem to be well received, but there has been some curiosity about why I left there to go to United. So, as you suggested, I've spent some time making sure my tale makes sense. By the way, Barney Jones lives in Brazil now, right? So these are different types of follow-up messages that you can provide. I don't think you would be doing all these at once, but at various different times. Re-enlistment of help and gentle recall of past promises. I was calling them this morning to see if you've heard of any leads or gossip I ought to follow up on. You indicated that you were going to the National Consumer Products Marketing Convention and said that you'd mention my availability to a couple of guys you used to work with. I was just wondering if you had a chance to talk with those guys, and if so, what my next step should be. I'm not sure if I like that approach, and I'll tell you why. If you're reminding somebody of something that they should have done, that can put them in a position of feeling bad that they didn't do it. Okay? I hadn't heard from this person. Let's do this, make your life easy. Would it be okay if I reached out to him directly just to take the pressure off of you to make an introduction? That would probably be a similar but different approach. Closing an agreement on future contact. Again, Bill, I really appreciate your help, and I'm grateful for your willingness to mention me to your colleagues. I hope I'm not making a pest of myself, but your advice and perspective have clearly been the most useful form among all the people I've talked with. I'll certainly keep you posted on where things go from here. Would there be any problem if I loop back with you by phone, say, toward the end of the month? Get that kind of priming the pump for the next contact. Next steps. Thank you notes for telephone follow-ups probably aren't necessary and would be a logistical nightmare. Unless someone has provided you with a piece of information that calls for immediate action on your part, if that information leads to something solid and promising, feedback to the contact is in order. Even here, however, the phone is probably an easier and more effective medium. The exception would be if the new information actually gets you a job offer. A note announcing your success is the best way to cement what now will be continuing a relationship in a different sort. So that's one space where LinkedIn might serve you well, is interacting and sending messages if they're responsive that way on LinkedIn, and maybe even writing recommendations or letting people know that that's what happened. Unfortunately, the majority of follow-up calls aren't going to produce valuable new information or insights. They'll only succeed in re-energizing your antennae and making sure that they're still tuned to your frequency. But you'll be gratified to see how often a follow-up call proves timely and serves to jog the contact's short-term memory. Just about a page and a half left here. And then we'll take questions and answers. Quote, Judith, good to hear from you. What a coincidence. I was thinking of you the other day. They just announced that the National Institute for Health is going to fund a pilot project to investigate how to do nationwide tracking of new tuberculosis cases in young adults. If the pilot project works out, they want to make it into a permanent program with a staff of perhaps 10, all across the country. I thought of you right away. With your background in public health and your new degree in computer science, it would be a natural fit for you. And I know the person you should call. Isn't that amazing? Unquote. You can look at the frustrations and rewards of following up in one of two ways. One, you can rail against the outrageous inefficiency of a process that has you spending countless hours that appear to produce little. Isn't that normal? That's why most people give up networking, because it's not producing results that they think it should. Or two, you can live for those moments when the probabilities go your way and follow-up call produces an unexpected boost to your fortunes. That's most what happens. So these follow-up calls really keep you connected to people and give you energy. Whether you love follow-up, tolerate it, or just plain hate it, it's an essential step to taking over and maintaining control of your future career. The life of a networker is a lonely one, and it feels good when someone takes an interest in you and offers continuing support. But this isn't a friendship yet. It's only a cordial relationship created to serve a particular end, your career development. The success of networking in general is a triumph of the strength in weak ties. But remember, they are weak ties. Be careful not to lean on these fragile relationships too hard, like demanding employment. Okay, so if you're meeting somebody for the first time, recognize you're just trying to get to first base. How often then? How often then? During a job search, every one of your contacts should hear from you in some way, shape, or form every 2 or maximum 3 months. A lot goes on in 3 months. The job market, the national economy, true that, right? The state of the world, all can assume an entirely new face within 12 weeks. If you check in every 6 months, and let's hope you're not in the job market that long, you're like a re-emerging hermit. People will ask, whatever happened to you? They'll say they assumed you found work. Out of sight, out of mind, rusty antennas, no news. Some networking job hunters have forsaken the direct time demands of personally following up in favor of writing and mailing newsletters, action updates, or even printed brochures. This technique shares the merits and demerits of all direct mail efforts. Your experience is maximized, but the likelihood of response is reduced. A mailing of this sort, particularly if done artfully or with a little humor, can generate some interest, but it can't create the same obligation to help you that a personal conversation will. Phone, video, face-to-face. Hopefully in that order, when everything opens again. Therefore, although such broadcast mailings may generate monetary interest in your situation and greatly enhance your exposure, they too must be followed up with a personal phone call. The cost-benefit analysis of such efforts therefore turns largely on how unique or attractive your skills are, or how broad a geographic spread you're trying to reach, and how much time you want to spend on the telephone. Beware of dreaded overkill. One networker took our command to follow up seriously and began to loop back with one particular contact at regular intervals. The intervals were weekly. Wednesdays at 3 p.m. like clockwork. He was polite and considerate, but a little passive. What can you do for me? And he didn't force conversations to run too long, but in about the 4th week, the contact blew up. Listen, Mario, I haven't signed up to be your personal career consultant. You're a nice guy, but you're really abusing my time and my patience. I hope your search goes well, but I've given you all the help I'm going to give you. I'm sorry, but your regular Wednesday calls are no longer welcome. Yikes. There's another inset here. National Follow-Up Day. Instead of building a daily follow-up into your regimen, some networkers prefer to set aside a major chunk of time and just wade in. It's like medicine, says one networker. I can tolerate it far better if I take it in large doses all at once. In this approach, a list of perhaps 30 names is selected for follow-up and prioritized. A day is set aside, and the networker sees how many can be reached before terminal boredom sets in. This approach is better than no follow-up at all, but it has its disadvantages. It will require calling at least some contacts during times in the business day when they're least likely to be available, and it can be hard to remain fresh and upbeat. Your inquiries may sound flat and automatic after the 10th or 15th call. That's great. Prioritize your follow-up. When planning the most logical way to prioritize your follow-up activity, consider this sequence. Number 1, contacts who have made you promises, have demonstrated an active interest in helping you, or have suggested specific time frames for looping back to them. I would actually put one in advance of that. A hiring manager that has a real need for someone like you, but hasn't interviewed you yet or put you into a hiring process. 2, proximity contacts, friends, relatives, and colleagues who should be kept informed of your progress. That's valid. 3, perspective contacts, those most apt to be the information flow and therefore sources of current information, if not active intervention on your behalf. 4, power contacts, people whom you can ask one or two specific favors, but who have no reason to dedicate their lives to your well-being. 5, distant contacts, those whom you want to maximize market exposure but minimize the time allocated to be spent on them. Good. That concludes chapter 8. So I'm here to answer your questions. For those who want to see the book, it disappears. This is what it looks like. And here's the ISBN on the back. I'm sure you can run it back if you need to. That's not a problem. It should be in the chat if you need it. So what questions do you have? Let's see what we got. Chelsea, did you see my last posts? I might not have. So if you can, put your question in there again. I'll see if I can answer it. Okay? Happy to do that. Do you have your finger on the pulse of the recruiting community? What do you think about what's going on? I believe that many of the people that I've worked with had a list of companies, and they had certain companies at the top that just aren't in play anymore. And they've typically had to invert their list of target companies or expand it to find the ones that are in play right now. And so some of the ones that come to top of mind, Amazon, AWS, anything to do with delivery services like Instacart, you really have to look at those companies that are active right now. So if you're looking for jobs right now, that's what I would recommend. Okay? Absolutely. Thank you, Nathan, for that question. How can you follow up with a potential new position when hiring has been out on hold? Are you okay? Literally. I mean, all of us are at home. I talked to a client today. At home, 3 kids in front of a Chromebook, teaching, right? So now we're working from home. We're teaching from home. We're thirsting for connection in some way. And unfortunately, a lot of people are connecting with things that are not productive, like alcohol, other things, not sticking to a regimen, getting out of a rhythm, okay? So I think it would be helpful if you just reached out to people and said, are you okay? I even mentioned, things like toilet paper and hand sanitizer. Do you need a meal, right? Some people are in a position right now where they don't have anything to eat. So I think this is a human thing. Are you okay? Are you managing this all right? It's not about me. It's about them, okay? Many companies have reached out, are in a hiring freeze. Is this the case for most due to COVID? I don't think it'll last forever, but there are companies and industries where hiring freezes is a response or a reaction, okay? So it's the initial reaction, and then there's a response. So after they've had time to process what's happened and the stimulus money comes in, they'll make some decisions on hiring that are relevant for them. But typically what I've seen is those companies that are flat out closed and not making any sales are likely going to take measures to cut cost. And so that includes furloughs, layoffs, and hopefully they'll survive. Right? Not every company is going to survive as a result of this. But what we need to do is continue to add companies to our list, reach out to more people, and stay engaged in a process. So if there's anything I can recommend, it's stepping up to the plate and taking another swing. The game is not over until it's over. And it's not over until the day you start work and you've cashed your first paycheck. Okay? Good. I don't know how long it'll last, but I know I have people that are interviewing right now with Amazon and AWS that are going to get hired. So there are companies hiring. Do you record these? Yes, I stream these to LinkedIn. Periscope apparently is not streaming right now, so I might have to go revalidate that connection. YouTube and Facebook in my group. The group is on Facebook is Finding Jobs Without a Resume, or Getting Jobs Without a Resume. Good. It's hard enough to getting to the follow-up point in the first place. No, I think this is about networking, and networking is about mutual exchange. It's not all about me. It's about the other person too, and learning and asking questions. I lean back, maybe the next book we'll read, because it's so difficult for me, is Covey's 7 Habits. So book club may continue here, but it's going to be Covey's 7 Habits. So if you think about that, I have them above my desk. The first step is be proactive. Begin with the end in mind. Put first things first. Think win-win, right? All these things apply to networking. Seek first to understand. So you would do well in networking if you just followed Covey's 7 Habits. So good. Thank you, Chelsea. I appreciate that question. Stay in there. Step in and take the pitch. Let's see. Is this from the National Business Employment Network? Yes, Tony, it is. Good to see you, my friend. Hopefully you're doing well. Do you record this? Yes, I do. I think I already answered that. Is there something we can do that stops us feeling like we are just applying online into the deep, dark abyss of nothingness? Yes. Schedule your applications. So what does that mean? That means I'm not spending 8 to 5 doing applications. I might spend, 2 to 5 in the afternoon when I can't meet people. So, part of this is, and it may sound elementary, but creating a priority list. Okay, my priority is people. If I have the opportunity to connect with people or write an application, I'm probably going to connect with a person. Okay, and if I haven't taken the time to reach out to people to facilitate those connections, then I need to spend time doing that every day. And yes, applications are a low return on investment. You can track your own numbers. In fact, I encourage that. Track your own numbers, right? How many applications to an actual interview? And even though it might be a phone screen, I would measure that. How many applications to a phone screen? And then how many applications to a hiring team interview, like with a hiring manager or a peer? And track those numbers regularly, okay? Same with networking, right? Think about how many networking connections and networking follow-ups, because that was what today's chapter was about, was actually following up. How many follow-ups did you make this week with people in your network? Just to give them a heads up to see how they're doing, right? Yeah. So, and that's the other thing. Who was it that said it the other day? The way we fill ourselves up is by filling up others. And so if we're feeling disconnected, alone, putting our applications in a black hole, then we need to... so I think it was Zig Ziglar said too, if you think you have it bad, there's always somebody got it worse. So I would encourage you to reach out to people or causes or volunteering, something, right, that can help somebody else. And I've always found that's true. I get so much more out of contributing to somebody else that it makes me feel better about my situation. Okay. And yeah, I've been out of work 4 times in my career, so I get it. I get all those things. Good. Any other questions out there? Happy to answer. This is your chance. Free career coaching, right? Let me see if I can find. Hopefully this won't go on the wrong screen. And yeah, it did. I'll take that off of it. National. There it is. I'll put the, since you guys asked, I will go over to LinkedIn. I'll put the link to the actual book so that you can have it in the chat. It should be in the chat though. I don't know why it wouldn't be in the chat. Is it in there for everybody? Could you let me know? Is it in the comments here? I thought it was. I'd have to go back and look. There we go. I'll put it in the chat there. I'm going to try to get on the PC here. I had it on my mobile device because that seemed to be easiest. The other thing I'd recommend is take a look at your LinkedIn profile. So I'm not going to make a judgment on anybody's LinkedIn profile, but there are 5 areas of the LinkedIn profile I think we should all really evaluate. The first one is your headshot. Your professional headshot should be something that's current, professional, interview ready, facing forward, where your head is encompassing 60% of the frame. So most of the people I see are either too far away or they're too close. or they're looking off into the distance, right? You can't connect with anybody and build trust and rapport from a photograph unless you're looking at the camera lens, okay? So keep that in mind. So that's the first thing. The second thing is the headline. Now the headline is that 120 characters that sits right under your name, okay? That's huge real estate, and it's keyword driven, additional weight to the algorithm. Please put keywords in there, okay? Whether that's program management or technical operations or, you know, software development, whatever it is, make that keyword driven. And the fact that you're maybe out of work and looking for a job is irrelevant, okay? So what I would not put in a headline is seeking opportunities, unemployed, open to new opportunities, anything related to your circumstance, okay? Hiring managers and recruiters are wanting to know what problem can you solve. There's a special spot in the intro section for you to put open to job opportunities, okay? So don't clutter your headline with irrelevant information, okay? The next step is, so there's headshot, your profile photo, the headline, and then the first role and experience, okay? That first role and experience that appears there needs to be well developed, and it needs to sing your song, meaning you have to have really strong accomplishments. Here's what I bring to the table. Here's what I offer. Because nobody, at least in my estimation, is going to read your whole profile, okay? Old habits are hard to break, and many hiring managers and recruiters, they go photograph, headline, first role and experience. They're scanning, okay? They're wanting to know what you did most recently. So make sure that first role and experience is dynamite. Now, just as a bonus, the featured section is huge. So if you have that appearing on your profile, I would put that right up there with your headline. That's valuable space that you need to have some content in that featured section about you and your capacity to deliver results. Okay? About you and your capacity to deliver results in support of your brand. Okay? So what is that? That's photograph, headline, first role and experience, recommendations. Okay? If you don't have any recommendations in the last year, get some. Okay? I would get as many recommendations as I can. You can always start with, if you have endorsed skills on your profile, go to your skills and endorsements. Look at the people who've already endorsed you. Reach out to them. If they have not written you a recommendation, ask them to. Think logically. In the last year, who in the last year could vouch for your experience? That could actually write you a recommendation today. Okay? Get those recommendations. So that's what? Photograph, headshot, a first role and experience, headline, recommendations. Okay? And the fifth one, let me remember what that is. Having some activity here. I think you should have a post. So I would have almost like a, what would you call it? Like a post that you do on LinkedIn, an article, let's call it an article, that really demonstrates your capacity. And make it like your how would you say it? If you had a series of accomplishments that support your capacity to do something, then I would write an article about that. And I would post that on here. And I would have some activity demonstrating that you're engaging with the marketplace. Okay? Good. The about section is really important, but I think I would put the featured section above that now, just because of the real estate that LinkedIn is giving to it. Okay? So it used to be, I said, the about section, but now I'm thinking the featured section is more important. So think about those things. There's things you can always work on, but the quality of your profile is going to signify whether or not people you reach out to on this platform are going to say yes to a networking interaction, whether there's a job included or not. Networking is not about your need for employment. It's about mutual exchange of information, okay, and an opportunity to share your brand message, okay? That's what's challenging for a lot of people. Let's see. How do I watch your previous recordings? Please post. So once this is done, it will show on my profile that it's done, and then you can review it. You can also go to my YouTube channel. I simulcast this to YouTube. So all of the Friday happy hours are on YouTube. Okay. Technology companies seem hard to reach. Yeah, every company's hard to reach right now. Who's not hard to reach? The people that work at those companies. Okay. I've seen engagement on LinkedIn go up, meaning there's people appearing here that haven't been here in years, literally, have parked a profile and not even participated. And they're back. Why? Because they're at home. They have bandwidth. They're not commuting anymore. So that gives them at least an hour, most of them, at least an hour every day where they're not in a car, stressed out, trying to get to the office. This is huge. What does that mean? That they're not interacting through their corporate assets. They're interacting through LinkedIn, through social media, through virtual happy hours. It's happening everywhere. Okay? The best way to network with tech companies is through the people you know. Start with the people you know first, and then get to the people you don't know second. Okay? I've used this to get feedback on my headshot. Cool free service. Thanks, Nathan. I mean, that's what this is all about. You know, this career happy hour is not about me. Okay? It's not even about you. It's about us. And I appreciate people like Nathan who come in here and offer contributions. Thank you. I appreciate you. Okay? Keep it coming. Yeah, there's lots of resources out there to learn about LinkedIn profile best practices, but I assure you that everybody needs to think about the basics. Okay? Everybody's going to have an opinion on what a good profile is. I can tell you from experience, I've been on the platform since 2004, and I'm not trying to brag, but I've seen a lot of profiles, and the ones that really stick out to me are the ones that have a good headshot, that have a compelling message, that draw me in